Hello everybody and welcome back to Conservative Lady Talk. My name is Percy and today's Toxic Femininity Part 3 is going to be about dating and domestic violence. Domestic violence, as defined by Oxford Languages, is violent or aggressive behavior within the home, typically involving the violence or violent abuse of a spouse or partner. There are 7 types of abuse as defined by the National Center on Elderly Abuse, or the NCEA. And yeah, even though it does say elderly in it, these still apply to even younger people. It's just that elderly abuse is pretty focused on, so, they're going to be the top knowledgeers on that sort of situation. And as defined by the NCEA, they define 7 types of abuse: physical, sexual, emotional, the ones we always hear about, the more open spoken topic, if you want to call it that. Then there's psychological, financial exploitation, neglect, abandonment, and self-neglect. Though self-neglect is not something that we're really going to be talking about because that is more of an elderly person and early teenager kind of a thing. But we are going to be focusing a lot more on psychological, sexual, and emotional abuse. Like I said, those are the more open, honest topics that most people want to talk about just because they're easier to talk about, because a lot of people still don't recognize psychological abuse as something that's serious. So one study investigated whether women who assaulted their male partners were more likely to avoid arrest when male partners called the police. Women are less likely to be arrested for it, meaning even then, if a male were to hit back in a form of domestic violence, even with witnesses, the male would still serve jail time, and the woman would either serve jail time or little to no time if she got any time. Most time, women get away with it. I've experienced it somewhat in my personal life, not from me being an abuser, but just from seeing it within a home setting is a good way to put that. I witnessed a lot of domestic violence growing up, and, because of that, I did see the fact that, when a man did strike back, they served jail time or served very serious, harsh punishments that, in my opinion, were completely unfair, even when it was in the form of self-defense on their end or in a form of restraint. Because that also happens where if you restrain yourself as a man, or like you're a man and you restrain a woman, you're going to get in trouble for restraining the woman, which, if you ask me, is crap. You shouldn't get in trouble for trying to prevent somebody from injuring you. It's self-defense. Dating violence isn't always heterosexual or domestic violence as well. But the issue is 29% of straight men report domestic violence. And this is out of the small percentage of people that actually report it. And on top of that, if you are a bisexual man, it does go up from abuse from your female counterparts. And bringing in the bisexual men at a percentage of 37%. So, that's, I can't do math, but I'm going to say that's about an 8% increase if you're bisexual versus heterosexual. Unfortunately, a lot more heterosexual men have that thing about them where they're like, oh yeah, I'm a man, I gotta tough it out. I've spoken about how toxic that is. I think it's really shitty still, but that's why a lot of statistics actually aren't completely accurate, in the sense that the numbers are definitely higher than need be. According to one study by the JAMA Pediatrics in 2015 for grades 9 to 12, so roughly the ages around 14 to 19 years old, these boys who experienced sexual teen dating abuse, only this portion, were 1.5 times more likely to commit suicide than their female counterparts. And if they experienced only physical, it was up almost 2 times. And for both dating violence and sexual teen dating violence for boys, it was almost 2.5 times more likely that they were going to commit suicide. Keep in mind, these are young kids. There should not be a 14-year-old that's talking about, yeah, I've been sexually assaulted by a partner. That blows my mind. Nobody should be reporting they're being sexually assaulted, let alone by a partner. But for a boy as young as 14, meaning they literally are in the last end of middle school, the beginning part of high school, that's fucking ridiculous. I understand more, which I know sounds horrible. It makes more sense for someone 18 and 19, because, they've been in more relationships, so therefore they have more experiences in the dating world. But someone as young as 14 should not be experiencing that. And that's a very unfortunate thing. And especially when they're more likely to commit suicide, that's honestly the most, heinous and horrible thing ever. Because suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And it's a really horrible, horrible thing to have to go through. Not just only for that person painfully dying, because most of the times when people die from suicide, it's pretty painful, and sometimes it's long and drawn out, meaning If you take pills, they're going to try and save you. If you shoot yourself in the head, there's not always a chance you're actually going to die. Now you're vegetable and depressed and now suicidal still. So, that's a giant issue. And going back into all of this, of the reported cases of dating and domestic violence, 1 in 9 men will experience violence. 1 in 4 men will experience physical violence. 1 in 25 men have been injured by a partner. 1 in 7 men have been victims of severe physical abuse. So the difference between injured and severely abused, or just abused in general, is, going with that definition of abuse, we're going to use that term lightly compared to the severe abuse. So, for just the abuse alone, that's like biting, scratching, hair pulling, throwing objects, like books, shoes, whatever the fuck else. Usually within a woman's arm reach, which seems to be everything when they're angry. And I don't understand how, but those women are like baseball pitchers when they get mad. And then with severe abuse, with the 1 in 7 men that have been victims of severe abuse, this abuse is as intense as burning, beating, strangling, stabbing. I believe I briefly mentioned it in a previous video, but I did have a friend who was actually stabbed in the gut by an ex-girlfriend. If you ask me, that's insane. That's crazy. No matter how mad I've gotten at somebody, I've never wanted to stab them. I don't care if they've held a knife to me. I'm not going to stab them because that's not right. That's what we call mental and crazy. That's just the type of shit we don't do. On top of that, 1 in 18 men have been stalked to serious fear, either fear for themselves or the other people around them, meaning they're so scared, not even really for their life. A lot of men report being more scared of being stalked about, like, their wife, because, ex-girlfriends, wives, those are crazy subjects just to get into on their own. But then on top of that, for like their mom, their sisters, their cousins, their brothers, their uncles, those kind of people, like they fear for those people's lives more than their own, which is really unfortunate and really depressing. 1 in 71 reported men in the US have been raped in their lifetime. Of that, 44.9% of male victims of rape were raped by an acquaintance. So, somebody they've probably like met 1 or 2 times. Maybe it's like a date once in a while. And 29% of those men were raped by an intimate partner, meaning their girlfriend, their wife, their fiance of a female form. So, that's a really unfortunate thing. I've had really good friends. I've had actually an ex-boyfriend who was a victim of sexual dating violence and of pretty traumatic dating violence. And it did actually affect the relationship a little bit, not in the fact that he thought I was going to hurt him at any given point. But if I got anxious, because, I used to get anxious a lot more when I was younger just because I didn't know what I was going to do in my life. But when I was younger, I would get super anxious, and sometimes my anxiety would come out and I would do like these little tapping things. Like I tap when I get anxious, or I bounce my leg, which is a horrible habit. It's so annoying to literally everybody around me. If I were to bounce my leg right now, let's see if it worked. It's not shaking the camera, but it's shaking like my table. It's a super annoying habit. I actually picked up the knee bouncing habit from my father. He's amazing man. It's just something that I picked up from him. But overall, with that anxiety, it did affect his anxiety. So when I would get anxious and I couldn't control it properly, except for doing like my little tics, I guess if you want to call them that, it would then set off his tics. And sometimes it would get so bad where he would have panic attacks in the bathroom. And to me, that was one of the most awful things that I could ever experience, would be going into the bathroom and holding him. It wasn't horrible in the sense that it was just like, oh my God, this is annoying. Like, why do I have to be doing this? No, it was annoying in the sense where it's just like, oh my God, like, my poor baby. Like, I would get so annoyed that I felt like I couldn't help him, is what I'm trying to say. Like, I'd go into the bathroom, I'd try to hold him until he would push me away, because, eventually with anxiety, if you get too anxious and someone's holding you, it does feel like the world is closing in on you, and that's very stressful. And, that used to happen with him a lot. So I would like hold him until he was like, okay, like let go. Or we had like a tap system. So like he'd put his hand like right here and tap a couple times. That means like, it was a silent cue, because for him, talking in intense panic for him wasn't something that would happen. He would actually go completely mute for the most part, other than gibberish between like intense amount of tears. And, that was something that was really horrible, because, I never did anything violent towards him. You know, I'd never been aggressive towards him. I never put my hands on him. I've never even like raised my voice at him. But because somebody had damaged him so badly, not that he's like damaged goods, but had just like emotionally traumatized him so bad that like my little bit of anxiety, like my grain of salt of anxiety, would affect his entire day. You know, he would be playing video games and I would get anxious and, you know, I'd start rubbing the back of my head, kind of like I'm doing now, but that was more of like a scratch because I had an itch. You know, just with that. And he would notice it, or he would get too anxious with something, and the next thing I know, like, he's on the ground, like, panicking. And I'm just like, oh my God, my poor baby. Like, you know, like the whole bathroom scenario. You know, it would just make me so pissed off because, you know, there were days where I just wanted to meet that girl just so I could have a little talk with her. And not because I wanted to inflict violence on her. That was never my intention. But it was to sit down with her and be like, hey, do you not understand the consequences of your actions? Because, like, you may not have to deal with, you know, what you've done to him, but I do, and other women now have to deal with what she did to him. I hope to God that he's better because I have no contact with him. Just, this is like a personal thing. You know, we just didn't end on like the right terms. There was a lot of anger when we broke up, and not really towards each other, but more towards the fact that we couldn't make it work because we desperately tried, it seemed like, for almost 2 years. You know, this is like one of my high school exes. It wasn't just, you know, my last recent ex or whatever. But that ex and I, you know, him and I, we tried so hard to try and keep everything together. So, you know, we were very angry when we broke up because we felt like we were failures. And, you know, like I said, we just kind of ended what we both felt like was a bad note. I have spoken to him a couple times since then. It wasn't really a healthy conversation. It was more of like, I'll leave my girlfriend, you leave your boyfriend, let's get back together kind of thing. And I was just kind of like, no, can't do that. You know, like, I'm with somebody now that I love and that I cherish and respect. And, you know, why would I want to throw that away for you? Kind of a thing. And it's like, you also had 2 years worth of chances to try. And I don't like giving second chances. I've only given 2 of my ex-partners second chances. Not that I've dated a bunch of people, but out of, like, I'm going to say a handful of people that I've dated, I've only given 2 second chances. And that's because with those people, I really felt like it was going to work. But, you know, you can only work on what you do. You can't work on what someone else does. And that's what I've learned in life. And, you know, it kind of goes back to the whole, I can control my actions, but I can't control how you react to them. And, you know, that kind of goes like both ways. But, you know, it's just like, it was one of those things. And, you know, we're both happy now with our lives. Every once in a while I'll look on his Facebook. I know that sounds crazy, but sometimes he'll come up on my feed. Like, he'll like something by accident from like a year ago. And it's kind of funny just to see that, you know, he's checking in on me still. And it's, you know, just one of those really sweet things. And yeah, I'm rambling at this point. I'm tired. It is almost 12:20 in the morning. So I would like to thank you guys for coming to Conservative Lady Talk. I am your host, Percy, and I can't wait to see you next.